Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karava Vahai Tejasvinavadhi Tamastu Ma Vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. Om. Good. Welcome back. We continue today by moving on to the next section that we've chosen for study. You all remember that I've chosen in advance certain sections of the Mahabharata that have some relevance to us as students of Vedanta, which means our main focus is not on the story, main focus is on spiritual teachings. Of course, it's nice when we see those spiritual teachings interwoven with story, and that's what we're going to see in the section, in the next section that we've chosen here. We're still in the Aranya Parva. Of course, the Pandavas are in the forest for a long time, which means the Aranya Parva is very long. How many chapters? Look at that, 299 chapters. Compare the length of that Parva to the other books of the Mahabharata. It's because they're in the forest for how many years? We know exactly. Exactly 12 years. So all of the various experiences are recounted in the Aranya Parva, also called Vana Parva. The section we've chosen is in the palace. So Pandavas are in the forest. Dhritarashra is in the palace. And he is having a dialogue with Sanjaya in which he's going to be lamenting, expressing his sorrow, his grief, his concern. We'll see the content in just a moment. To introduce this section, two things to observe. One is to make a connection to what we just studied. We just studied that wonderful section, Draupadi teaching about the law of karma. And in those sessions, I commented that if someone takes an extreme position with regard to the law of karma, what are the two extreme positions? One extreme position is karma trumps all. That is, the prarabdha karmas with which you're born have more effect than anything else in your life. The other extreme position is that your free will is the most powerful thing. These are two extreme positions. One extreme position is that free will equals 0, karma equals 10. The other extreme position is free will equals 10, karma equals 0. These are the extreme positions. Both of these extreme positions are harmful. As we've discussed in our prior classes, the outcome of every situation is partially due to your effort, free will, partially due to karmas. We had that wonderful river example to explain that at some length. Turns out that Dhritarashra subscribes to one of the extremes. Dhritarashra subscribes to the extreme that the effects of karma are overwhelming. Therefore, the use of free will is futile. The consequence of his wrong interpretation of the doctrine of karma is tremendous. He's portrayed throughout the Mahabharata as a weak character, right? Most of you know the story quite well. And story after story reveals his weakness. Well, we're now talking about the root of his weakness. He has concluded that whatever he does won't make any difference. He's concluded that whatever is going to happen is already predetermined by karma. This is his extreme interpretation of the doctrine of karma. And because of that interpretation, he doesn't try to do anything. He doesn't try to address or correct any of the problems and issues that have arisen in his kingdom. And of course, that directly led both to the dice game and the eventual war. So that also ties into something else with regard to Dhritarashra in particular. Actually, not exactly related, but kind of the theme of this section is Dhritarashtra has a hard time taking advice. Do you know someone who doesn't like to take advice? You know someone, right? Someone who you suggest, you know what, you could do it like this or that, and a person says, don't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing. Well, it turns out Dhritarashtra has that problem. And it's really unfortunate because he needs some proper advice and counsel, and he refuses that advice and counsel again and again. Most significantly, and what we're going to see in this sequence of verses, is before the dice game, Vidura, his younger brother, warned him, don't let this dice game happen. Warned him. Said, if this dice game happens, it spells disaster. Vidura is acknowledged as extremely wise. His very name means one who is wise. And not surprisingly, Dhritarashtra rejects that advice at great consequence. So we're going to examine some of that in this next sequence of verses. So let us begin without any further introduction. It begins with the narrator. Vaishampayana vacha, Vaishampayana Shakralokagatam partam, Shakralokagatam Shrutva rajambika sutaha, Shrutva rajambika Dvaipayanadrishishrestat, Dvaipayanadrishishre Sanjayam vakyam abravita, Sanjayam vakyam abravita. In the second line, Raja Ambika Sutaha. Raja, the king. Which king? Ambika Sutaha, the son of Ambika, Dhritarashtra. So King Dhritarashtra, the son of Ambika. What about him? Shrutva, having heard. Having heard about Partam, about Arjuna. About Arjuna, who is Shakraloka Gatam. Arjuna, who went to, Shakra means Indra, who went to Indra Loka. Part of, in fact, maybe a dozen or more chapters of the Aranya Parva deals with Arjuna, who had gone to Indra Loka, and there's many stories are part of that. Indra, remember, Indra was his father, right? And so Indra, knowing the war was imminent, wanted to bless Arjuna. So Indra arranges for Arjuna to go to Indra Loka, and then Indra bestows various blessings upon him and tells Arjuna, there's one blessing I can't give you, Lord Shiva can give you. What is that blessing from Lord Shiva? It is the Pashupata Astra. It is a particular astra, a particular weapon. Pashupati is Lord Shiva. That which comes from Pashupati is Pashupata. So Pashupata Astra is a weapon given by Lord Shiva, and given by Lord Shiva to Arjuna. Of course, Lord Shiva is not going to just say, here, Dedo, or Lelo, here, take this. Take this weapon. You see, my Hindi is not so good. So here, take. So Arjuna has to work for it. In fact, the story goes, it's a long, complicated story. Just in summary, Lord Shiva appears in the form of a common hunter and challenges Arjuna to a fight. And it's a really tremendous fight. Arjuna is losing. And he says, how can I lose to a hunter? This guy is merely a hunter. Then finally, the hunter reveals himself as Lord Shiva, and he is so pleased by Arjuna's prowess, and also pleased by Arjuna's devotion. Turns out while Arjuna is fighting with the hunter, he's praying, "Oh Shiva, please help me. Oh Shiva, please." Not knowing that the hunter is Lord Shiva. So finally, Shiva is really pleased and reveals himself to be Lord Shiva and gives Arjuna this Pashupata Astra. This weapon is like, in modern parlance, it would be like a hydrogen bomb, a thermonuclear weapon. And the analogy is apt. Why? Because Arjuna never used the Pashupata Astra during the war. He used all of his other weapons. He didn't use that weapon. Why? The use of that weapon would have destroyed everyone and anything. It would be total destruction. So therefore, he avoided using it. Has a thermonuclear weapon ever been used? Hydrogen bomb has never been used in war. Why? Its destructive power is just too frightening to contemplate its use on a battlefield. So it's an apt analogy. But he's given this powerful astra, and okay, enough about Arjuna and the astra. So we know that Lord Shiva gave him this Pashupata astra, like a thermonuclear bomb, and Raja, the king Dhritarashra, Shrutva, he heard about this. He heard about Partam, Arjuna, who was Shakraloka Gatam, who had gone to Indraloka and there had undertaken his battle with Lord Shiva, in which he was finally granted the Pashupata Astra. And Dhritarashtra heard about all this from whom? Dvaipayanat. Dvaipayana is a name for Vyasa. Rishi Vyasa, who is Rishi Shreshtat. He is the greatest of rishis. Who's writing this? That's just interesting to reflect on that. So he composes this. He says he heard it from Vyasa, the greatest of rishis. He's not praising himself. This is the story. Okay. So Dhritarashtra heard from Vyasa, Dvaipayana Rishi. He heard about the fact that Partha, Arjuna, had gone to Indraloka, had received this Pashupata Atra, and thereafter, Dhritarashtra, having heard about this, what does he do? Vakyam abravit Sanjayam. He said this, abravit, he said, Vakyam, the following statement, Sanjayam, to Sanjaya. Sanjaya is actually his charioteer, but a blind king doesn't have much use for a charioteer. A charioteer will take you out onto the battlefield and all of that, and a blind king has no place on a battlefield. So the charioteer, Sanjaya, becomes like an advisor or a minister to Dhritarashtra, and that's what we see throughout the story. So Dhritarashtra says to Sanjaya, Dhritarashruvacha, Dhritarashruva, Trilokyamapi tasya syad, Trilokyamapi tasya, Yodha yasya dhananjayaha, Yodha yasya dhananjayaha, Korjunasya gratastishtet, Korjunasya gratastish, Api mrityujaratigaha, Api mrityujara. Start in the second line. Yasya dhananjaya yodha. Yasya, the one for whom Dhananjaya, Arjuna, is a yodha, is a fighter, is a warrior. The one who has Arjuna on his side. That's what it means. The one for whom Arjuna fights. What about that person? No, we're not talking about Arjuna. We're talking about the one for whom Arjuna fights. Tasya, for that person, Trilokyam api syat. That person will gain all three worlds, just because Arjuna is fighting for his sake. Kaha Arjunasya agrataha tishtet. Kaha tishtet. Who can possibly stand Arjunasya agrataha, in front of Arjuna? Who can stand before Arjuna? Api, even if mrityu jara atigaha, even if that person has conquered jara, old age, and mrityu, death. Even if a person has conquered old age and death, how could they stand before Arjuna? Who's saying this? Dhritarashra. Why is he saying this? Because he knows Arjuna has that Pashupata Astra. So he knows there is no one in the world who can possibly stand up to Arjuna, not only because of the fierceness of Arjuna's capacity, but because he has this Pashupata Astra. Arjuna cannot be defeated by anyone. What is the consequence of that? Mama putra duratmanaha, mama putra durat, sarve mrityuvasham gataha, sarve mrityuvasham, yesham yuddham duradharshaihi, yesham yuddham duradharsh, pandavai pratyupasthitam, pandavai pratyupasthitam. Mama putraha, my sons. You know, usually fathers are very fond of their sons and speak highly of their sons. They praise their sons. Not Dhritarashra. He knows his sons have some problems. In fact, he calls them duratmanaha, evil-minded. My evil-minded sons. What a father. My evil-minded sons. What about them? Go down to the last line. My evil-minded sons, for those sons, they are doing yuddham, they are going to fight. They're going to fight with whom? Pandavaihi, with the Pandavas. They're going to fight with the Pandavas, who are dur-adarshaihi, who are impossible to defeat. And they are yuddham, they will be engaged in battle. Everyone knows. It's interesting, a foregone conclusion. Even when they've first gone to the forest for 12 years, followed by one more year in isolation, everyone already knows that after 13 years there's going to be a battle. They all know it. They all know that the banishment to the forest is not a solution to the problem. It only delays or defers the problem. Everyone knows that. So, that yuddham, that battle, which is prati upasthitam, which is in opposition with the Pandavas, that battle against the Pandavas, who are impossible to defeat. So what about it? Mama putraha duratmanaha, for my sons, who are evil-minded, sarve, all of them, mrityuvasham gataha, all of them will fall under the control of Yama, Lord of Death. Which is a poetic way of saying they're all going to die. Yama vasham gataha. They have all fallen under the control of Mrityu, the name for Lord Yama, and it means they are all going to die. Dhritarashtra knows this well. And he continues his lament so we'll go quickly when it's just story. He continues his lament to Sanjaya. Yatha hi kiranha bhanos, yatha hi kiranha tapanti hachara charam, tapanti hachara, tatha partha bhujotsrishtaha, tatha partha bhujotsrishtaha, sharastapsyanti me sutan, sharastapsyanti me sutan. He gives a metaphor. Yatha, just as, bhanoho kiranaha, just as the rays of the sun. What about the rays of the sun? Tapanti, they scorch. Iha, everything here. Chara acharam, everything that moves and doesn't move, anything that's sentient and insentient, just as the rays of the sun scorch. Obviously, he's not talking about the sun rays in New Jersey. These rays are not going to scorch anyone, but you all know how hot things get in India. So those, just as the rays of the sun can scorch everything that lives or not, tata, in the same way, partha bhuja utsrishtaha sharaha. Tata, in the same way, the sharaha, the weapons. The weapons, what weapons? Partha bhuja utsrishtaha, the weapons which are released by the bhuja, by the arms of Arjuna. The weapons wielded by the arms of Arjuna, including that Pashupata astra, those weapons, what will they do? Tapsyanti, they will scorch whom? Me sutan, my sons. So in a poetic way, he is bemoaning the fact that a war is inevitable, and in that inevitable war against Arjuna, equipped with that Pashupata astra, Dhritarashra knows that all of his sons will die. To this, Sanjaya replies, Sanjayo vacha, Sanjaya Manyuna hi samhavishtaha, Manyuna hi samha, Pandavaste mitaujasaha, Pandavaste mitau, Drishtva Krishnam sabham nitam, Drishtva Krishnam sabhanit, Dharma patnim yashaswanim, Dharma patnim. We're going to see a reference to the story here, but there is so much teaching that takes place in the context of the story. Just as if you read some history, if we read a book on history, I just happened to read a bunch of stuff on World War II. I don't know, I had some interest, and I didn't understand a lot of the details on World War II. So I read, I educated myself about it. My gosh, you learn so much by all the mistakes these guys were making, all the ridiculous, horrible things they were doing. You learn a lot from the story of history. In the same way, we can learn a lot from the story of the Mahabharata, see the actions people perform and the consequences of those actions. We're going to see that. Here, Sanjaya responds to Dhritarashra, who's bemoaning the fact that his sons are all going to die. And Sanjaya is not like, what is the English word, coddling? He's not coddling Dhritarashra. He's a king. You don't coddle a king. You level with the king. You instruct and guide a king, which is what Sanjaya is doing. And Sanjaya is now going to instruct Dhritarashra that there's a reason his sons are going to die. And the reason is the Pandavas are so angry. He says, Manyunahi samavishtaha pandavaha te. Te pandavaha. Those Pandavas, Arjuna and his brothers in particular, those Pandavas are samavishtaha, filled with what? Manyuna, with manyu, anger. The Pandavas are filled with anger. The Pandavas are enraged. Of course, if the Pandavas were weak, it wouldn't be a problem. But the Pandavas, Sanjaya here says, those Pandavas are amita ojasaha. Those whose ojas, those whose power is amita, limitless. Those Pandavas who possess limitless power, they are enraged. Enraged by what? Well, we're going to see enraged by the actions of Dhritarashtra's sons. Dhritarashtra's sons acted in such a way as to enrage the Pandavas, and in this way Dhritarashtra's sons have spelled their own doom by enraging the Pandavas, whose might is limitless. Well, what specifically did they do? Of course, if you know the story, you know that they did countless deeds. The Kauravas did countless deeds which would irritate and enrage the Pandavas, but there's one deed in particular that Sanjaya points out in this verse and the following verses. He said, those Pandavas, drishtva, having seen, sabham nitam, dragged into the hall. This is after the loss of, I think, the second dice game. Remember, there were 3 dice games. I think after the end of the second dice game, someone was nitam, dragged, sabham, into the hall. Who was that? Krishna. Krishna, not Krishna. Krishna, which is a name for Draupadi, the one who is dark. Remember, she was born of a ritual fire. So being born of a fire, she is described as having dark skin. So Draupadi, remember that story? Dushasana, according to the story, Dushasana grabs her by her hair, drags her into that hall, and this, Drishtva, the Pandavas, having seen Krishnam, Draupadi, Sabham Nitam, dragged into the hall, Draupadi, who is Dharma Patnim, who is the wife of Dharma. Dharma means Yudhishthira. I mean, they're married to all, but Dharma Patnim, the wife of Yudhishthira, who is Yashaswanim, the very exalted, illustrious wife of Yudhishthira, was unceremoniously dragged into the hall. And Sanjay describes this in some detail, which you will just see it briefly. He says, yet, very powerful. If you like poetry, this is some really powerful poetic imagery. Yatra vispuramanushto, yatra vispuramanushto, bhima prahavacho mahata, bhima prahavacho, drishtva duryodhane oru, drishtva duryodhane noru, draupadya darshitavubhau, darshitavubhau. Yatra, where, in that hall, Bhimaha, Bhima, the mightiest, no, I won't say the mightiest, but the actually Arjuna's elder brother, in between Yudhishthira and Arjuna, is Bhima, the big one, the mighty one, the fierce one, as his word suggests, the one from whom you would be afraid. What did Bhima do? First of all, Sanjay describes that scene in the hall, Yatra, in that hall. Bhima was Vispuramana Oshta. His, should be Aushta. There's a no, Aushta, the Sunday. His Oshta, his lips, were Vispuramana, trembling. Bhima, with trembling lips, having seen Draupadi dragged into the hall, what did Bhima do? He praha, he said. What did he say? Mahat vachaha, a great vow, a terrible vow. We're going to see the vow in the next verse, but what was making his lips tremble? What made Bhima utter this terrible vow? Drishtva, having seen, Duryodhanena uru. The Duryodhanena darshitau. Ubhau uru. You have to connect all these words. Darshitau. Duryodhanena darshitau. Shown by Duryodhana. What did the Duryodhana show? Ubhau uru. his two thighs. He showed his two thighs, Draupadyaha, to Draupadi. Now, this is a very elegant text. If it's going to make any sexual reference, it's going to do so in a very subtle way. What happened in that hall is Duryodhana wanted to when Duryodhana saw Draupadi, he wanted to tell her, "You are mine. I am going to have you," in a sexual way. And the way he demonstrated that is he lifted his dhoti and showed his thighs to her. This is described in that scene in the Sabha. And this is what Sanjay is referring to, that Bhima saw Duryodhana insult Draupadi in this way by showing his two thighs. Ubhau uru, his two thighs, darshitao, was shown, Duryodhanena, by Duryodhana, Draupadyaha, to Draupadi. And this enraged Bhima, enraged them all, but enraged Bhima so much, with his lips trembling, he uttered this vow. What was the vow? Uru bhetsyami te papa, uru bhetsyami te gadaya vajrakalpaya, gadaya vajrak trayodashanam varshanam, trayodashanam ante durdyuta devinaha, ante durdyuta devinaha. He says, Papa, O sinner, he says, Te uru, your thighs, bhetsyami, I will break. I will break your thighs. Bhima utters this vow, and he finally fulfills his vow on the last day of the 18 days of battle. He breaks. He kills Duryodhana, breaking his thighs. But here he utters, Sanjaya is referring to Bhima's vow, Uru bhetsyami, I will break your thighs. How will I break your thighs? Gadaya, with my club. Vajra kalpaya, which is as hard as diamond. With my club, hard as diamond, my mace, I will break your thighs. When will I do this? Trayodashanam varshanam ante. Ante, at the end of varshanam, of some years. How many years? Trayodashanam, at the end of 13 years. 12 years of exile in the forest, plus 1 more year of Ajñatavasa, living without being recognized. So after those 13 years, Bhima says, I will break your thighs. Durdyuta devinaha. My translation here is incorrect. It's not in the vocative case. That word durdyuta, first of all, what does the word mean? Devina is a one who plays. One who plays at dyuta, dice. Dur, one who cheats at dice. So he's referring to Duryodhana, who cheats at dice, and this word is actually connected way up on top to te. Te, durdyuta devinaha. Their words are very far apart. So he says, I'm going to break your thighs. Te. Te uru, your thighs. Who are you? You who are durdyuta devinaha. The thighs of you, the one who cheats at dice, I am going to break. So this is Bhima's vow. Now before we go on, I mentioned that we can learn a lot from these stories, like we can learn from any story. So here we see the Pandavas are enraged by these acts by these really harmful acts committed by the Kauravas over the years. Even when the Pandavas were children, they were being abused by the Kurus. And this abuse went on for years and years. And when somebody is abused for years and years, the anger really builds up. Have we seen that in world history and culture? We've seen it again and again. In fact, in every armed conflict, you can see the roots. I think in modern times, one of the best examples is what's happening between Israel and Palestine. So year after year after year, these Palestinians are getting clobbered. Now, this is not this is not a criticism of Israel, but it's just to point out that when you commit himsa, as Israel does again and again, of course Israel is equally the victim of so much himsa. In fact, this is the problem. Look what goes on. Palestinians blow up some Israelis, so therefore in retaliation the Israelis blow up some Palestinians, in retaliation for which the Palestinians blow up more Israelis, and retaliation for which the Israelis blow up more Palestinians. This has been going on since, I think, 1946. I think that's the year that that Israel declared independence. So for these decades, they're committing harm to each other. It builds a cycle of violence. And that's what we see here in this story, built up between the Kauravas and Pandavas. This cycle of violence has built up and caused so much anger that a terrible war is inevitable. That's the message here. Okay, back to Dhritarashra. Dhritarashra vacha, Dhritarashra apidani mama sutas, apidani mama sutta, tishtiran manda chetasaha, tishtiran manda che, yesham bhrata gurur jeshto, yesham bhrata gurur vinaye navatishtate, vinaye navatishtate. So, Sanjaya, having told Dhritarashtra that your sons are going to die because of this cycle of violence, the anger has built up in the Pandavas to such a degree that it's inevitable that your sons are definitely going to die, O king. In response to Sanjaya's words, Dhritarashtra says, Api, then how? Idanim, now. Mama sutaha tishtiran. How will Mama sutaha, my sons, tishtiran, how will they survive? My sons. We said before, Duryodhana doesn't speak highly of his sons. Now he's calling them manda chetasaha, my dull-witted sons. So how will my dull-witted sons live? But now his point is actually in the second half. What is the problem? My dull-witted sons, yesham, for them, their jeshtaha bhrata, their eldest brother, who's he referring to? Duryodhana. So yesham, for my sons, their jeshtaha bhrata, their eldest son, their eldest brother and guru. Now, guru, not in a formal sense, but, it's like the eldest teach the youngers. That goes on in every context, in every family. So Duryodhana, being the eldest brother, is in a role of teaching and instructing and guiding his younger brothers. Well, what happens when the eldest is not the right one to be giving that guidance and instructions? And that's exactly what Dhritarashtra observes. He says, Jeshtaha bhrata, their eldest brother, who is also guru, instructing them, what about him? Na avatishtate vinaye. He doesn't follow. Vinaya is another word for dharma. He doesn't follow dharma. The eldest. This is a problem. In every family, there's like a role, amongst a bunch of brothers, there'll be a role model. The eldest will be the role model. And if the eldest, who is the role model, doesn't follow dharma, but all the younger brothers follow him, He doesn't follow dharma, he follows adharma. And all the younger brothers follow him. And this is very clear to Dhritarashtra. So, this is what, again, we see in world culture when there is a leader or a role model who is corrupt, their thinking and behavior is perverted. This was the case for Duryodhana, the role model for his brothers. And look at the consequence of having the wrong role model. We've seen this again and again in world culture, where the leader if the leader doesn't follow dharma, what terrible consequences. We've seen that in our lifetimes recently with leaders like Saddam Hussein, Bin Laden. Before that, I mentioned reading World War II, Hitler. Very interesting. In fact, back to our topic, we talk about not following advice. Duryodhana didn't follow Dhritarashtra's advice. Duryodhana wouldn't follow anyone's advice. And we see in history again and again leaders not following advice and causing big problems. When I was reading about World War II, I read where Hitler's military advisors advised him again and again and again on what to do, and he fought with them, refused their advice, and it turns out, had Hitler followed their advice, Hitler may have won. Seriously. If Hitler had followed the advice of his military advisors, he might have won that war. But his rigidity, refusing that advice, led to his own downfall. Duryodhana's rigidity, ignoring the advice, led to his downfall. And we're going to see Dhritarashtra's rigidity, ignoring advice, led to his downfall. Do you know someone who ignores advice? Do you ever ignore advice? So this is a warning to us all, a warning not to be rigid. So if we have a position we feel very strongly about, maybe we should hold on to that position without such a tight grasp. Sometimes we end up grasping the wrong things. Somebody will say, do you think you might be grasping the wrong thing? If your response is, no, I know what I'm doing, that response deprives you of an opportunity to recognize a mistake you've made. So we should, in all phases of our lives, we should have enough humility to know that we can make mistakes. Now, and when I say all phases of life, this is a common problem for older people. When we're young, of course, we make... Interesting. Allow me just to make an observation. When we're young, we make maximum mistakes. Correct? I'll speak for myself anyway. I made so many mistakes when I was young. Horrible, terrible mistakes. Just miserable mistakes. And isn't it ironic that when you're young, you're least likely to listen to advice? When you need it most, that youthful arrogance. Again, I'll just speak of myself. I was filled with that youthful arrogance, and I made all kinds of mistakes, and I refused to take advice of others, and it caused great suffering for myself and for others as well. But then, now that we've arrived at this old age of maturity, suppose we think that we've outgrown the capacity for making mistakes. It's another kind of arrogance. There's the arrogance of youth. There's the arrogance of maturity also. To think that we have reached this level of maturity where we're no longer likely to make mistakes, therefore we no longer need the advice of anyone else. This is all foolishness. We need a little humility here to admit that we are capable of making mistakes. Therefore, we should be open to listen to the advice of others. And this topic continues as Dhritarashtra continues to complain. to Sanjaya. Mamapi vachanam sutta, mamapi vachanam sut, na shushushati mandabhak, na shushushati mandabhak, drishtva mam chakshushahinam, drishtva mam chakshusha, nirvicheshtam achetanam, nirvicheshtam achetanam. Mama api vachanam na shushushati mandabhak. There's irony here. This is dripping with irony. Dhritarashra is complaining about his son, Duryodhana, who he calls mandabhak. Again, it was like calling someone a blockhead. It's the equivalent, mandabhak, the one who is manda, the one who experiences dullness, the one who is a blockhead. So he says mandabhak, that blockhead son of mine, na shushushati, he didn't want to listen. He didn't want to listen to what? Mama api vachanam. He didn't want to listen to my instructions. So look at this. Dhritarashra is complaining that his own son didn't follow his advice. Where's the irony? Did Dhritarashra listen to other people's advice? Dhritarashra ignores the advice of Bhishma, and especially of Vidura. So Dhritarashra ignores their advice, but then complains that his son doesn't follow his advice. What is this? It just shows the pervasiveness of this problem of being rigid and ignoring the advice of others. So, Dhritarashra complains that my own dull-witted son didn't want to listen to my advice. Why? He says, according to Dhritarashra, he says, Duryodhana didn't follow his advice. Why? Drishtva mam, because Duryodhana saw me, chakshushahinam. He saw me with my blindness. He saw that I was blind. He saw I was nirvicheshtam. I was unable to walk around without help. And he saw me achetanam. He saw me looking foolish. So my own son saw me as being blind, as being incapable of walking around without guidance. He saw me as being foolish, and therefore my own son didn't follow my directions. He complains, but again, the irony. Duryodhana didn't, what do they say in English? Like father, like son. Here it is. So Dhritarashra didn't follow advice. Duryodhana didn't follow advice. And at what consequence? He continues. Partha bahubalot srishta, Partha bahubalot srishta, mahachapa vinisritaha, mahachapa vinis, divyastra mantra muditaha, divyastra mantra muditaha. Sadayeyu suranapi, sadayeyu suranapi. So Dhritarashra, anticipating the worst, says, Partha bahu bala utsrishtaha. He's referring to arrows which are utsrishtaha, launched, due to the Bahubala, the strength of arms. Whose arms? Partha. Those arrows launched by Arjuna's strong arms. Those arrows which are Mahachapa Viniskrataha. Those arrows which are launched from Arjuna's mighty bow. Those arrows which are Divya Astra Mantra Muritaha. These Divya Astra, these are not ordinary arrows. These are Divya Astra, divine weapons. What is the difference between an ordinary arrow and a divine weapon? An ordinary arrow, you put in the bow and you shoot it. What about a Divya astra, including this Pashupata astra? It is a physical arrow, but it's an arrow that it's a weapon that has to be prepared for use. And how do you prepare that Divya astra, that divine arrow, that divine weapon? How is it prepared for use? Mantra muditaha. You have to recite some mantras to empower that special arrow before launching it. This is the story. So he refers to these arrows with these divine arrows, including this Pashupata astra that Arjuna got from Shiva. He said those weapons are such that sadayeyuhu suranapi, those divine weapons could even destroy the gods. If these weapons can destroy even the gods, how would my sons, Dhritarashra speaks, how would my sons possibly survive that? He continues, Yasya mantri cha gopta cha, Yasya mantri cha gopta, Suhrit chaiva janardanaha, Suhrit chaiva jana. Haristrailokya nathasa, Haristrailokya nathasa, Kim nutasya na nirjatam, Kim nutasya. So we're talking about advice. And here, Dhritarashra makes a very interesting observation. A quick comment. Dhritarashra, in spite of all of his shortcomings, he's actually quite intelligent. He's a highly, highly intelligent man. He has his flaws, as we saw. He's rigid, and he doesn't listen to advice. But he himself is highly intelligent, and he makes some profound observations. He certainly observes his own son's behavior and interprets it correctly. Here, he's making an observation about Arjuna, and especially an observation about Arjuna's relationship with Sri Krishna. So here, Duryodhana observes that Yasya, the one for whom, Janardanaha, in the second line, Krishna. Janardana, one of the many names for Krishna. Yasya, the one for whom, referring to Arjuna. He says, Yasya, for him, for Arjuna, Krishna, Janardana, Krishna is his suhrit, his friend. So Arjuna has Krishna as his suhrit, as his friend. Not only as his friend, but also Goptacha and protector. Arjuna has Sri Krishna as friend and protector, and here's the big one, mantri cha, and advisor, source of guidance, source of counsel. So I said, dripping with irony. Look at this. Dhritarashtra, who himself doesn't follow advice, he's observing that Arjuna is fortunate to have the advice, the mantri. He's fortunate to have Sri Krishna as a friend, to have Sri Krishna as a Gopta, protector, and in our context, most importantly, Arjuna is blessed to have Sri Krishna as his mantri, his advisor, his guide, his source of counsel. Now, interesting that Dhritarashtra here sees the value, interesting. He sees the value of advice, but he himself can't accept advice, which means everyone else needs advice, but not me. You get it? All right. Also, another interesting observation here Dhritarashtra makes. He says, Janardana, Krishna, who is the friend, protector, and guide for Arjuna. What about that Krishna? He says, Saha Harihi. He is Hari. Hari means Vishnu. Here, Dhritarashtra acknowledges that Sri Krishna is not just another king on the battlefield. He was a king. He was the head of his kingdom. But not only was he king, he was also Harihi. He is also Lord Vishnu. He is Trailokyanatha. He is the master of the three worlds. Interesting. Dhritarashra acknowledges this. In prior sections, we skipped over them. The story is so elaborate, so we're just taking very small parts. But in earlier, Sri Krishna, in at least two different times, revealed his divine nature. In fact, I think I counted once 5 different times. We talk about this Vishwarupa Darshana that occurs in the Bhagavad Gita. If you go through the whole of the Mahabharata, I think there are 5 Vishwarupa Darshanas. 5 times where Sri Krishna reveals his cosmic nature as Lord Vishnu. And there was one time when he did this in the palace, and Dhritarashtra saw, and Duryodhana also saw. So Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana both saw a prior time. Prior means prior to the Bhagavad Gita, a prior time when Sri Krishna revealed his cosmic form, revealed his divine nature. And when he did so, Dhritarashtra understood, Saha Harihi. He is Hari. He is Trailokyanatha. He is the master of the three worlds. He is Ishvara. Duryodhana saw the same thing and came up with a very different conclusion. Duryodhana concluded that this guy is some kind of magician. That was his conclusion. He absolutely rejected any notion of divinity for Sri Krishna, and he thought it was some cheap magic trick. So what an interesting scenario. Krishna reveals his divinity. Some people see the divinity, some people don't. Isn't that the general principle? Ishvara's divinity is present here now. This is one of our typical Vedantic topics. We'll just make that connection. Nice place to make the connection. Really speaking, Vishwarupa Darshana of Bhagavan is going on right now, right here. Ishvara is revealing himself in all his glory wherever we look. And I think you all get what I'm talking about, but if you have any doubt, look around us. The world in which we live is just amazing. The richness, the complexity, the intelligence of the world in which we live. The world need not be like this. Imagine if in the world the highest evolved beings were amoebas. Could be. Imagine on this earth, on this planet, life only evolved as far as amoebas. That's not the case. Life has evolved in amazing and spectacular ways. This is Ishvara's Vibhuti. These are the glories of God, which is revealed here and now. Everyone sees Ishvara's Vibhutis. Everyone sees the glories of God. Some people recognize it as a glory of God. Other people will say it's a cheap magic trick. Which means they will not be able to appreciate the glory and divinity of what is here now. It's a matter of perspective. Dhritarashra could appreciate the divinity of Sri Krishna. Duryodhana could not. In the same way, perhaps we can all appreciate the glory and divinity of all that exists, but we recognize not everyone is capable of appreciating that. So nice observation here. So Dhritarashra recognizes Saha Harihi. He is Vishnu. Trailokyanatha. He is the master of the three worlds. Kimnu tasya na nirjitam Tasya, for him, for Sri Krishna, kim nu na nirjitam, what could not be conquered? What could not be conquered by Sri Krishna, who is Hari? Did you ever have a grammar teacher tell you not to use a double negative? Double negatives are used all the time in poetry. Come on. So, kim nu natasya nirjitam. What could not be conquered by him, by Sri Krishna? Okay. We're going to finish. This is a very short section, so we're going to just finish it up. Tatoham suhridham vacho, tatoham suhridham vacho, duryodhanavashanugaha, duryodhanavashan, smaraniya smarishyami, smaraniya smarishya, mayaya nakrita pura, mayaya nakrita pura. So, Dhritarashra is starting to recognize, to use American English, he blew it. And what is he recognizing? He's going to admit in this verse and the final, and there's one more verse we'll see, he's going to admit he should have taken Vidura's advice. And here's what he says. He recognizes too late, but he recognizes. He says, Tataha, therefore, aham, I, and go in the second line, I was Duryodhana Vasha Anugaha. I was under Duryodhana's influence. The father is under the son's influence. This is his weakness. This is again and again, you can see evidence of how, and why was he so weak? We discussed it at the opening part of the class. He concluded his own prayatna, his own effort, his own free will, he concluded it was useless. He concluded that no matter what he did, his karmas would determine the outcome, so therefore his efforts were useless, his efforts were futile, therefore he didn't try. He didn't exercise any effort of his own, and therefore, being so weak, he fell under the influence of Duryodhana, Vasha, Anugaha. So being influenced by Duryodhana, he says, aham, aham, I, Suhridam vachaha smaraniyaha. He says that the vachaha, the instructions, suhridam, of my well-wishers including Vidura, Bhishma, and others. The advice of my well-wishers, smaraniyaha, should have been followed. And the grammar is a little awkward. I'll paraphrase it. He's saying, I was under the influence of Duryodhana, and therefore I ignored. We have to supply that. Because I was under the influence of Duryodhana, I ignored the advice given to me by Suhrit, well-wisher, including Vidura. I ignored that advice. That advice was smaraniyaha. It should have been followed. But now he says, smarishyami. Now I get it. I should have followed it then. Now I know. And he admits, maya ya nakritaha pura. Pura. Then meaning at the time of the dice game in particular, maya ya nakritaha, I couldn't follow that advice then at the time of the dice game. Remember, Vidura said, don't go there. Don't let that dice game happen. And that's how the chapter concludes. This also changes into the longer meter. Repeat after me. Yanma bravit viduro dhyuta kale. Yanma bravit viduro dhyuta kale. Tvam pandavan jeshyasi chen narendra. Tvam pandavan jeshyasi pendav. Dhruvam kuru namayam antakalo. Dhruvam kuru namayam antakalo. Mahabhayo bhavita shonitaugha. Maya bhayo bhavita shonit. Very powerful. It says, Yat ma abravit viduraha dyutakale. Dyutakale, at the time, Dhritarashra speaking here, Dyutakale, at the time of those dice games, remember there were 3 dice games, at the time of those dice games, Vidura, the trusted advisor, his younger brother, but a great source of advice, he says, Yat mam abravit, what Vidura told me at the time of the dice game. What did Vidura tell Dhritarashtra at the time of the dice game? That's what the rest of the verse says. Prior verse said, I wasn't able to follow Vidura's advice at that time, at the time of the dice game. Well, what exactly did Vidura tell Dhritarashtra at the time of the dice game? That's what the last 3 lines of this verse says. Vidura told Dhritarashtra, he said, Narendra, addressing him, the end of the second line, Narendra, O great king, Tvam, you Jeshyasi, you will conquer Pandavan. You will conquer the Pandavas at dice. This is the context. We're not talking about battle yet. He says, Chet, if you conquer. That word chet is very crucial. It comes with chain due to grammar. The word is chet, if. Chet, if, tvam jeshyasi, if you defeat Pandavan, if you defeat the Pandavas, in this dice game. What will be the consequence? Dhruvam, certainly. Certainly, kurunam, ayam antakalaha. Certainly, kurunam, for the Kurus, ayam, this will be antakala. Antakala, the last time, the final time, death. This will spell disaster. If you let this dice game occur, and if you are victorious in this dice game, it spells disaster for the Kuru family. It will be mahabhaya. It will be something of terrible fear. Bhavita. It will become shonita ogaha. It will become literally a mass of blood. I've translated it bloodbath. It will become a bloody and horrible disaster. Dhritarashtra was warned by Vidura, and he couldn't follow that advice. Why? He puts the blame on Duryodhana. He says, I was under Duryodhana's influence. Was it really Duryodhana's fault? Duryodhana was just being himself. The problem was Dhritarashtra's weakness. And what was the source of his weakness? Go back to the beginning of our class. The war took place not because of Duryodhana. So go way back. The war took place because of Dhritarashtra's weakness in allowing the dice game to take place. And why did Dhritarashtra meekly allow the dice game to take place? Because he misinterpreted karma, the law of karma. He concluded his free will amounted to nothing, so he didn't try. He didn't try to stop the dice game because he assumed the dice game was going to take place no matter what. He would say, it's my fate. If the dice game is going to happen, it is my fate. I am helpless. So he surrendered to that fate, which was a horrible mistake. He denied his own free will, which is a gift given by Ishvara. Denying the gift of free will, a gift given by Ishvara, and it's denied. What a ridiculous mistake. Horrible mistake with horrible consequences. Okay, we went through this section very quickly because it was mostly story, but it had some very, I think, relevant teachings. As we proceed, we're going to leave the story behind increasingly and focus more on Vedantic teachings in the coming sections. Next section is this Agajara section with Bhima. We'll see that in our next class, and the handouts will be available on our website ahead of time. Okay, some announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our class for children at 11 o'clock. The Mindful Awareness Meditation session will be at 5 p.m. and at 6:15 p.m., a question-and-answer session that I'll conduct. We have a project today. Some of you have noticed in the dining room downstairs that the tiles are buckling and breaking and so forth. Unfortunately, we've had several times where we flooded the floor of the dining room and the water has damaged the tiles. So we're making arrangements to remove the old tiles and put down a new surface that won't be damaged if we flood it again. This is karma. You have to learn. So if we know that we're subject to flooding, and if we replace our floor with another floor that would be damaged by water, that would be dumb. So anyway, we're putting down a new floor that won't be damaged, and we're getting ready for that. The work will start actually later today. Immediately after class, we need to empty the room, the dining room, which means the tables and chairs need to be removed, those big carpets that are down there, everything that's there on the floor, everything needs to be removed. We're going to need quite a bit of help. We're going to need at least 15 of you. And if you're not afraid of lifting things, there are a bunch of stuff that need to be lifted and moved. So please stay back. They will also serve a lunch after you're done. Should only be less than 1 hour of work. Also, if you're going down to help, be sure to wear your shoes, just a safety issue. So wear your shoes, go down into the dining hall, and you can help empty the dining hall, get ready for the new floor, and then afterwards you can enjoy some lunch. Please stay back and help. Library will also be open after class, so we'll conclude with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.